There we go. As I said yesterday, I'm going to, since we've been talking about AI in this conference, I've utilised the capability of AI to illustrate my presentation today. And so all of the diagrams have been produced by ChatGPT. And I was going to introduce myself first, so I thought I'd get ChatGPT to talk about my career history, and it point blank refused on morality grounds to talk about me. So I asked it to talk about someone like me, and so this is the image that I asked it to create, saying how frustrated I was with ChatGPT for not producing any image that I had described correctly. But anyway, this is sort of tongue-in-cheek because I think that AI and particularly digital signal processing has a lot to assist us with in communications. But I hope you'll find some of the illustrations quite amusing. So anyway, I did ask it to summarise my career, and here is a young design engineer designing satellite communication circuits. You wouldn't believe it, would you? So that was the first part of my career. And then, as Kevin said, running and building up a satellite ground station. And then you wouldn't believe the third image. Of course, this is me talking to you guys. I said, no, less hair. I haven't got that much hair. And it just kept on producing more and more and more. So anyway, this is now. I hope you're not insulted by how you're depicted in this image here. But anyway, I've got 10 very brief lessons. I think we've discussed most of these in the talks in the last couple of days anyway. So I'm not teaching you anything new. There's nothing revelatory here. But I think we are a very interesting global cottage industry, and we should support each other. So here are my 10 reflections on the ground station industry. So my dad set up a business when I was a teenager in the garage business. He was selling exhaust pipes, and a brand new Commodore PET computer arrived. And we and my brothers stayed up all night, and we discovered this thing called a spreadsheet. It was called SuperCalc, and by about 4 o'clock in the morning, we'd become billionaires on paper, because we realized that we could make a few quid selling one exhaust pipe, and if we sold lots of them, that we could become billionaires. And I think we run the risk in the ground station business of doing the same thing, and particularly, I think, in the LEO market, where we think about new space and we think about the number of LEO satellites that are being launched, and we think, oh gosh, here's this business model where we can make money per minute or per pass on these satellites. And the thing that we forget about is that the satellite operators have their business model and their profit to make, and we just need to be careful that we think this through. We don't get completely carried away by the fact that we can make lots of money out of somebody else's business model without actually understanding what their business model is. So that's our sort of first lesson from the industry. And I think the next lesson is understanding the customer's needs, and I'm accused of this all the time, and I really couldn't get ChatGPT to produce this image, so I was drawing it myself, on the right-hand side at least. But for the large part, we're engineers, and we think in terms of how complicated everything is. In a previous life, a company of mine set up a satellite internet business. And Steve over there is looking very amused at this. We tried very hard to make things as complicated as possible, because this had to be a complicated business. We were satellite engineers, and we were very surprised that a lot of marketing companies and just anybody almost off the street got the idea of satellite internet. Yeah, I understand what that is. I live in a rural community and I want to have satellite internet. And of course, as satellite engineers steeped in the industry, we thought it had to be complicated. But really, what the customer just wanted was a simple solution. Just give me one or two choices and let me buy it. And we thought we were the bee's knees, and a marketing company just employed some people, straight out of college with a script, and completely thrashed us in the business. And if you look at what, we talked quite a lot about SpaceX, Starlink, and Elon Musk's skill is perhaps in simplifying to the consumer what it is that they want. So there's a key lesson I think that we need to learn. I think we are the forgotten child, maybe the problem child of the industry. We look at us. Here we are, a very select bunch of people in the space sector. But let's not forget that all of the space sector, when you talk to the public about space, they think of astronauts and rockets, they might think about satellites, but rarely do they think about the ground segment. And, I can remember in the times when we have interacted as a design engineer with the space sector side, the different parts of the industry, and we're at the almost at the low-cost end of the industry. At one stage, we were supplying satellite internet to the World Rally Car Championship, and it's a similar sort of deal. On the one side of the pit lane were a few tents with all the mechanics and actually making the rally cars work. On the other side of the pit lane were the marketing pantechnicons with lavish coffee machines that cost more than the toolkits that the mechanics had on the other side. We're the poor relation of the industry, if you like, but actually we make it all happen. There isn't any part of the space sector that doesn't traverse a satellite ground station or equipment that has been provided by the equipment providers. And I would think there's probably few people in the audience here today who are from the sort of customer side. We're a group of people who are quite introspective. We look towards the services. So I think we need to sort of stick together a little bit. Okay, another key lesson from the industry is that change happens. And, we know, I don't need to teach you about this, but I think for decades, the satellite industry relied on TV revenues, and it grew, and it didn't change very much. But when it does change, it changes very quickly. And so, what do we need to do to make sure that we don't disappear altogether? And I think an important lesson here is that we need to think about those issues. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but really always think about where the industry is going and how we can invest in flexible solutions. And to talk a little bit about that in more detail, I just wanted to talk about the life expectancy within the industry. We're in an industry that started in 1957 with Sputnik, and certainly Goonhilly that I've been involved with started in 1962. There are assets within the ground segment that are decades old, and certainly with antenna assets, you can repurpose them and you can keep them going for years. A CubeSat, on the other hand, I can remember visiting Planet Labs just after they'd unfortunately had a whole batch of their satellites explode on a SpaceX rocket. They were actually happy that those CubeSats had not got into space because they were insured and they had the next batch all ready to go. So they were innovating and moving forward so quickly that they didn't mind that a whole batch of satellites blew up on the launch pad. And so we had this issue with the longevity of the spacecraft and the missions, but also just in terms of lessons from the industry, there are certain contracts that last for an awful long time. So if you look to the satellite TV industry, for example, actually building a population of millions of users who have a dish pointing to a point in the sky means that you've got a longevity of service. Trying to switch off a network like the telephone network is trying to be switched off in the UK at the moment takes a long time, a lot of planning. So winning contracts might be a difficult thing to do, but once they're won, they can last for an awful long time. And I was amazed. Goonhilly acquired ComSat in the States last year, and when I visited ComSat, there was equipment that I'd sold to them 2 lives ago. 30 years ago, the equipment was still in operation and still operating with some Inmarsat satellites that were launched 30 years ago. So it's incredible how the industry can have these very short timescales and turnarounds, but also services can last for a huge amount of time. So I think that's understanding that balance and being able to reuse assets is something that we can do in the industry and is certainly helpful. And just while I was looking at that, I thought, what is the longest operating spacecraft in existence? And it turns out that it's Voyager's birthday today, 47 years old, still operating. So, we can make the spacecraft assets last that long. It's perhaps one of the only spacecraft that was powered by nuclear power. But there we go. 24 billion kilometers away in 2 days round-trip light time from Earth. So I think another key thing about our industry is it's all about partnerships and collaboration. We're in the communications industry, and in order to communicate, we have to have standards. We have to be able to understand, one engineer in one place needs to be able to program a modem or communications system so that another one can pick it up. And actually, the very first lesson I learned in my career, after I'd been through the fire training, was I'd worked for British Telecom Research Labs right out of university. And I was taken into a video conference room and where we were setting up a satellite video conference. And the first thing we did was a loopback test. And the guys said to me in the room, we're doing this just to prove to ourselves that this is working. So when it doesn't work, when we communicate with the other people, we can say, it's all right, leaving here. And that seemed to be the motto of the ground station industry at the time. It's all right, leaving us. But it's really a key important feature, I think, of the industry that we collaborate with each other and find ways to do that, particularly, I think, in light of what's coming next, which is, so I asked GPT to draw me a frequency allocation table. So it drew me a table with all of the frequencies on it. Very good. Well, why not? So let's sit around the table and discuss the frequencies. I attended one single meeting at Ofcom where they decided they ought to get together with the space sector and discuss, C-band and things. And so they pulled out there's a published frequency allocation table, and there's the sort of, here's our sort of working copy. The thing that surprised me was that every spare bit of frequency between 10 gigahertz and 100 gigahertz had been pre-bagged by the mobile phone industry. And I said, have you thought about this at all? Why is this? And they said, well, they came and lobbied us. They said that there's this massive requirement. And by the way, Ofcom, we've got a government remit to provide good quality internet to the population of the UK. And so this is how it's done. It's done, we've been told, it's done by the mobile phone network. And it made me reflect, I think, a little bit about how the industry has seemed to, in terms of our communications, oscillated between providing communications, first of all, by radio back in Marconi's day, and then a subsea cable was laid, and then we could communicate by a subsea cable, and then satellites came along, and we could do a better communications link, communicating by satellite, and then fibre came, and we decided to go back to terrestrial again. And now we seem to be coming full circle yet again with Starlink and OneWeb and constellations providing internet. So I think there's a lesson here that perhaps the industry does go through cycles, and so let's not cut off our nose to spite our face by letting the latest innovation book all of the time with the regulators and all the bandwidth. Maybe there's a different solution there. So we're getting through these. That's good, because I haven't got a lot of time left. Goodness, I asked ChatGPT to show me. Actually, I cheated a little bit. I said, can you show me some 120-year-old engineers in a space factory? So this is what it came up with. And actually, this also belies another issue within AI, in that when I asked it to show me 120-year-old engineers, they were all men. I have to apologize to the women in the room, and I specifically had to ask it to change the image. I think that's confirmation bias that we need to be very wary of in our AI, that you have to actually ask that specific question. But I think I've called this the pace paradox, and why. I think it's to do with the fact that, I talked before about the fact that the industry didn't seem to change for decades when we were making lots of money out of TV. I think it's the same in terms of the sort of old space and new space. Change doesn't happen until it happens, and then when it happens really quickly. And so, again, I cheated with ChatGPT. I said, show me a bunch of students in a coffee shop making satellites. But the reason I asked it to do that was because, again, that occasion when I visited Planet Labs, they had a city block in San Francisco. They took over the entire ground floor of it. They divided it into 4, and they were actually building satellites in their kitchen. And on the day that I visited, they had a vibration machine which was there to test the satellites before they got put on the rockets. They were using that to basically have a competition between them. It was just before Christmas, and they'd been making gingerbread houses. And so the competition was to see whose gingerbread house would survive the longest. And but anyway, this is the pace of change of new space. So when change happens, it happens incredibly quickly. And I want to illustrate that with this catalogue. It's not my catalogue, really. It's a chap called Gunter, you want to look him up, Gunter's webpage. He has spent his time cataloguing every space mission ever. This is it. This is a catalogue. It starts off on page 1 here in 1957 with Sputnik 1, and it finishes when I decided to print it just the other day with, guess what, a launch of a Starlink satellite. Anyway, this isn't a new innovation from me. I was asked to do a talk 6 years ago at the Eden Project about space. And so I knew about Gunter's webpage. So I printed this catalogue out in 2018. And the point that I wanted to make in 2018 was how the industry had changed, because we were doing a lot of work with Planet Labs, and they were launching their flocks of Dove satellites, and they were launching them 40 or 50 at a time. And so I'm going to find where I was. It was March 2018 when I gave that talk. So here's we'll get there. 14, 10, 16. So the last time I produced this list, that in this hand here was the entire space industry. 60 years from 1957 to 2018. And this, more than half, is all of the satellites that have been launched in the 6 years since 2018. That's 60 years, and that's 6 years. That is, if you want to have a look at this afterwards, this latter half of the book is almost entirely Starlink, OneWeb, Space B, Starlink, OneWeb, Starlink. Analyze this, and you will know what to do about the future of the industry. It's quite astonishing. So, in the 2 minutes that I got left, the 10th lesson, if you like, from the ground station industry is that it's not about satellite dishes, it's not about modems, it's not about frequency converters or standards or anything. It's about us. We actually make it happen. And whether companies succeed or fail, whether industry succeeds or fail, whether we send missions into space, everything that we do, it's not done by the things, it's done by the people. And so, we are a small select group of people here, but I think we're the ones that make a difference. And coming together, I think it's fantastic that this conference has happened. And it's, the satellite industry, the ground stations around the world are very often populated by technicians who don't have a say. They're run by corporations that are in the big city somewhere, or and people that think that this is perhaps the bit of the poor relation of the industry, and the important bit is the bit that goes into space. But I asked ChatGPT to do one more thing for me, and that was to say, what is the total value since 1957 of the space industry? And it sort of didn't want to tell me, so I, come on, teased it out of it. $10 trillion industry, here it is. Every single bit of information has come through the ground network. So that's our industry, that's what we do. And I think it's a brilliant industry. So there we go. That's happy to answer any questions if you have any. But I think we work in the most amazing industry.
Gents? No.
Stunned you on to silence. There we go.